Oh, guys, do you know that saying, pride goes before a fall? Pull up a comfy chair. Do I have stories for you this week? So, this week was our date to take the ram lambs to the processor. We set these dates almost a year in advance, depending on the processor and how busy they get, so there's not much wiggle room. This time we had enough slots for 10 ram lambs, and we had 18. So the plan was to load all of them in the trailer, sort which ones we wanted to go to the processor, and then we'd take the rest to the sale barn at Mount Hope. It's about an hour and a half away. Typically, when we haul animals like this, the processor allows us to drop off the animals the night before the actual date, and the sale barn's the same way. Drop-off is typically after normal business hours, and there are holding barns set up for just that purpose. Now, John and I were able to accomplish part one of the plan together. It took us an hour and a half to get the rams loaded from the field and into the trailer. Partly, this is because they are a disrespectful bunch that kept jumping over our temporary fences. Note to self, use hotter fence to train them next time. And partly it was because they'd bonded with the 5 bulls, and the bulls started acting like bodyguards for the rams. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. The bulls would actually move between us and the sheep so we couldn't catch them. Absolutely wild. At least they're super docile bulls, because we were weaving and dodging and lunging with shepherd's crooks in between the bulls. So at any rate, part 1 was a success. Rams in the trailer. Then John had to leave for fire class. He's getting certified so he can be part of our local volunteer fire department. It's really good stuff. So I wasn't super worried. All I had to do was take the kids, we'd drop off the first group at the processor facility, and then scoot down to Mount Hope and get some tasty dinner at Mary Yoder's Amish Kitchen. We were ready. I even managed to spin the truck and trailer and back in at the loading dock on the first try. 6 sheep went into the holding barn, and 4 jammed themselves through a 4-inch gap between my trailer and the fence. And then they ran for the 55-mile-an-hour road right out front. It's November at about 4:45 in the afternoon, so the light is fading and the retail butcher shop side of the operation is closed. We're screwed. Luckily, 2 guys ran out from the shop and helped us push the sheep back away from the road. Ez took off like absolute lightning and starts chasing them down. They jumped across a ravine with the creek in the bottom, took off across the cornfield, and disappeared into the woods. 3. The other one took off another direction. One of the guys looks at me and asks, "So what's your plan?" I literally don't have one. He's taking pictures with his phone, and I start running after the 4th sheep, and I lost it in a brush-filled part of the ravine. So I call John with the promising opener of, "Please don't divorce or disown me, but I lost 4 sheep." He pivots to come to the rescue, but he's 30 minutes away. So at that point, I get flagged down by the farmer who's out in the cornfield running his combine. He's been watching the whole scenario unfold, and I apologize profusely. He waves it off and says he's already called his wife and kids to come help and that they're on the way. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I station Fiona, who's wearing a hot pink coat, at the entrance to the woods. All I can see of Ez is the glowing red dot from his heated vest. He'd managed to run the 3 other sheep to ground in a tangle of logs and pricker bushes, and he's keeping them from running anywhere else. So as the light is fading, this dark-colored Suburban comes crawling through the field with its lights on and spots Fiona at the edge of the woods. It parks, and out come 3 teenagers in Carhartt coats and overalls and boots and hats and gloves, and they are ready for action. We plow into the woods, and I crawl into the tangle of thorns to start hauling sheep out, and they grab them, and we trek out of the woods, toss the sheep into the back of the Suburban, and the 7th grade boy sits on them so we can close the door for the tailgate. And now as we're rolling back to the processor's building, the kids are chatting back and forth about they haven't seen the inside of the new facility yet and their 4-H projects and what school district they're in. John comes roaring past us, ready for action. So we wrangle the 3 sheep into the holding pen and we go back for the 4th. It is full dark now, and we've got a collection of headlamps and flashlights, and we're walking along both sides of the ravine looking for the 4th sheep, which is, of course, brown to match the brush. At least the 3 white ones stood out in the woods. So the 7th grader dives and misses, and then John takes a flying leap and legit lands on the sheep. Like in the cartoons where the legs all go out in different directions and the eyes bulge out, really. It was that. It was so good. Epic. So he thrashes around, staggers up the ravine with the sheep, and it too goes in the back of the Suburban. We thanked them over and over, and they promised this wasn't even the craziest thing they'd ever seen, only a moderately crazy farm event. They went home. John scooted off to fire class only a little late, and we decided there was no way we would make the Mount Hope delivery deadline, so we turned for home, parked the truck and trailer by the barn, gave the sheep hay and water inside the trailer, made ourselves some pizza bagels for dinner, showered away any ticks, and collapsed. Then, none the worse for wear, I rolled down the driveway at 6 the next morning because I still have to get to the sale barn, delivered the sheep to the auction facility using their very easy drive-through. They close a door behind you and then one on either side of your trailer, so there's literally no chance for escape, nowhere else to go. I've never been so grateful for the assistance of strangers. Took myself home for some more coffee and went on my next adventure. I went back. I had gotten the business card from the farmer with the combine who helped with the sheep with his teenagers. And so I took them a frozen turkey as thank you and privately vowed to be overly careful with all of my future parking jobs. So much for having pride in my new farm skills. But it turns out I didn't have to wait long to test my vow. My bodyguard bulls from the other day, they needed to be moved to a different pasture, and the distance was long enough that it would be really impractical to set a lane of fence and then walk them there like I usually do. Plus, these guys don't have much practice with that type of move, so it was much safer to just load them in the trailer and drive them to the new spot. Now the catch, I was the only one home to load them. So, another step one. Back the trailer through the pasture gate to set up a loading spot, and this is tricky for a couple of reasons. One, the trailer's about 2 feet narrower than the gate, so I needed to not hit either side as I back up, but I also need to make sure I don't leave any gaps for them to sneak through. I learned my lesson with the sheep. So this meant I needed to get through the gate and then sort of turn the trailer a little to block the gaps on either side. Now add to that, this pasture has a hill right inside the gate, so I needed to back in far enough that the trailer door wasn't blocked by the hill, but not so far that the deck of the trailer was too high and scary for them to step into. Now do all that with only your side mirrors and a bumper-pulled trailer instead of the maneuverability of a gooseneck. So I park, and I block any possible teeny gaps with extra temporary fence posts and the 2 reels of fence I brought with me. And now for step 2, get them into the trailer. Right. They're halfway down the length of this very long pasture, and they have approximately 0 interest in coming to see me after the sheep catching extravaganza earlier in the week. They've also never had grain, so I don't have much to entice them with. Normally I'd bring along a bucket of feed and shake it so they know they're tasty treats, but with these guys it just wouldn't make sense. So I call for backup. Except John's getting on a conference call in about 5 minutes and can neither come help me catch them nor can he bring me extra fence reels to herd them with. I also happen to be further than walking distance from the house. It's a couple miles. I'm not going to go walk, and I can't move the trailer now. Like, I'm committed, but I'm stuck. So I spend his meeting time slowly moving the bulls up towards the end of the pasture where the trailer's parked. I'm singing to them. I'm moving into their space to put pressure on and then stopping when they get too bothered. By the time John rolls up with my fence supplies, I've got him maybe within 20 feet of the trailer. And now the fun begins. He heads out for his next meeting, and I start getting creative. I used 1 reel of fence to create a smaller pasture, cutting them off from the rest of the space. Then I attached my next reel at almost the same spot, but I swept through that pasture like a pie wedge, so they move away from my fence, and I kept walking until they're within 10 feet of the fence. Then I hooked that reel on. So then they couldn't get into the old space. So then I did again, leapfrogging, setting smaller and smaller spaces until they could stand shoulder to shoulder next to the open trailer door. But if they wanted to move, the most open space was inside the trailer. And then I waited. All this happens at their pace. If I've learned anything at all in all of these dealings with livestock, it's that I have to move at their pace. If I rush or I move too energetically, they get freaked out and they react in unpredictable ways. I want slow and predictable. And so I wait. Eventually they started testing the idea of getting in the trailer. One would get on and then step off. Then another would try and step back off. So I moved in on the side with the trailer door and started to slowly swing it closed just to put on a little extra pressure. At that point, 3 of them self-loaded into the trailer and 2 rude individuals jumped my very clever fence system, speed mode. So as the 2 ran away, I jumped and quickly closed the trailer door. Yes! Okay. Now Now I had 3. The only problem is that I needed to get 2 more in there without releasing the first bunch. But luckily this trailer has a divider door in it for just this purpose. Unluckily, it was latched open so I could drive the trailer without it slamming, and the latch was too tall for me to reach from the outside. Pause. Think. I unhooked their 150-gallon water trough, dumped it out, dragged it over, and flipped it upside down. Now I have something to stand on. So I managed to reach inside and release the latch, but now I needed to maneuver all 3 into half of the space and shove the door closed. Still from the outside, which is easier said than done. They kept trying to get into the wrong section, and they get their heads stuck when I tried to swing it closed. So I was vacillating between sweet-talking them and calling them very rude names, all the while trying to move this heavy metal door with my arm shoved through the side of the trailer. Eventually it works, and I was able to open the main door of the trailer again, roll up my fence setup, and go again. Now this time I had to outsmart fence jumpers. So I started with my same strategy, make smaller and smaller sections for them to stand in so they would get closer to the open trailer. And this time though, once I got them pretty close, I made the fence lines hot, connected the electric, turned it back on. So before I was able to leave them off, the rest of the bulls respected just the idea of the wire, and these last 2, not so much. Fencing on the fly with hot wires kept the last 2 bulls in, but also meant I had to be extra careful not to light myself up in the process. I was also counting on them to see and hear their buddies in the trailer as part of an incentive to load. So finally, after yet more patience and waiting and tiny adjustments to the fence, they loaded. The easiest part of the whole thing was driving off, backing into the next pasture where I'd already set up their next space and letting them go. One brief moment of panic. I couldn't remember how am I going to release the divider door without it getting flattened by 3 bulls if I go and open the door, and then I'd have to go in and open the divider. Well, silly me. As I'm standing on the fender of the trailer outside looking in at these bulls at the divider latch and trying to reach it, oh, there's a handle. Oh yeah, that's actually meant just for that purpose. Pull the handle and it releases the door and away they go. Done. 2.5 hours. But I did it. They frolicked on their merry way down to their new grass, and I did it alone, with no escapes. So the moral to this story, if there is one, is probably slow and steady wins the race. And check your parking job multiple times before you release the critters. Also, the price of meat is high for a reason. This is a lot of work. I only wish I'd taken videos of the whole process. It would have been highly entertaining. So thank you for coming along on my adventures from the week. And if you want to help reward me for my crazy work, check out our online store. I'll happily ship you some lamb snack sticks so you can live the adventure right alongside us, but without the panic and the cardio. Have a great week.